I believe that there are only really two different kinds of stories. One of them I absolutely love, and the other I'm not a huge fan of. Today I'm going to share with you what those two different kinds of stories are and what makes them different. Welcome to Nazirite Media Real Talk, where we do unscripted, unfiltered deep dives into some of the conversations I wasn't able to cover in our main videos. I believe you can classify every story that you've ever read, seen, or heard into selfish stories and selfless stories. First, we're going to talk about selfish stories. In a nutshell, selfish stories are all about self-discovery, self-actualization, manifestation, even revenge, getting what you want, and you often see there's no character development. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of this so you can kind of understand where I'm coming from. First up, we have the Lego Movie. Now, I absolutely loved this movie when it first came out, and it's a great family-friendly movie. But now that I'm an adult, I don't like it at all, and that's because I know it's a selfish story. I actually think that there's a lot of Gnostic elements that go into this movie. If you'd like to see us do a deeper dive on this movie, let us know in the comments and maybe we'll do a full video on it. In a nutshell, the Lego Movie is all about self-discovery and self-actualization. The movie literally teaches a form of manifestation. So there's a lot of New Age beliefs that go into this. And the reason I said it has a lot of Gnostic influence is because in the Lego Movie, the god of that world is effectively like an evil god who controls that world. And all the characters are learning how they can kind of manifest what it is that they want and whatever they desire. So that's why I think the Lego Movie actually kind of teaches New Age belief. It's actually kind of a Gnostic movie. And I actually think it's a selfish movie. I don't recall anything in the Lego Movie that had to do with selflessness or sacrifice or anything like that. I think it had to do with like manifesting your own desires and building the world that you want to build. And so for that reason, I would say that the Lego Movie is a selfish movie. And next up, we have Zootopia. Now, I've already covered Zootopia in another video, so you can go and click the link in the description if you want to see our Zootopia video. In that video, I already expressed that one of the problems I had with this movie is that it teaches social and political messaging, and it doesn't have like an ancient story. It doesn't have a story of timeless themes or character development. And so in this movie, you don't really see any kind of character growth. Again, the whole movie is about social and political messaging. And so that's how I would classify this as a selfish movie. We don't really get to see a character, grow with time or become a better person over time. You don't get to see a character become more selfless over time. Once again, this movie is kind of all about self-discovery like the Lego Movie was. It's all about kind of getting what you want and kind of molding society to make society look the way that we want it to look. And so for that, I would consider it to be a selfish movie. And so next up on the list, we have Quentin Tarantino movies. Now, as a former film student, I love Quentin Tarantino movies. Obviously, I would think that Quentin Tarantino movies are great and that they're well made, but I would say most of these are actually selfish movies. The reason why I'd say that is because a lot of these movies are just about getting revenge. Most of these movies have to do with a character who just wants to get revenge on somebody or something. There's not a lot in these movies that has to do with a character like trying to save somebody else or trying to help the world. Even though sometimes their revenge can lead to that byproduct, there are cases in some of these movies where a character is selfishly seeking revenge, but it just happens to help others in the process. But the main focus is almost always on, I'm trying to get revenge for the things that happened to me in my life. And from a Christian perspective, that's not okay. These movies are really entertaining, they're really well made, and they're really fun. But from a Christian perspective, life isn't about getting revenge. And so all the characters in these movies who are seeking revenge are selfish. And so for that reason, I think a lot of Tarantino movies are selfish movies. And that's why I can never give them like a perfect score. Next up, we have the Indiana Jones movies. Now, this one's going to shock and surprise a lot of people. I'm not saying that I don't like the Indiana Jones movies. I grew up watching these movies, and I do love them, but they're not perfect. And the reason why is because I think that they're kind of selfish movies. The main reason I say that is because there is no character development. In the Indiana Jones movies, Dr. Jones is always just going on a selfish adventure to try to selfishly prove some kind of archaeological fact so it can boost his career. And so the whole adventure is just him trying to get whatever he wants, and he never has any kind of character growth or character development. This is super important and relevant because in almost every movie, he confirms religious truth. In the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, he finds literally the Ark of the Covenant mentioned in the Old Testament. Now, you would think from an archaeological perspective, this would prove to him that those Bible stories about the Ark of the Covenant were all true. I mean, he found it after all. And when it was opened up by the Nazis, it had real power. So that should at least get him to question what exactly was that power, what exactly is the Ark of the Covenant. And so he should at least have some kind of religious belief after this movie. In the second movie, Temple of Doom, he goes to India and he finds some kind of like weird Indian cult that's doing sacrifices and rituals. And there are like these magical stones and they have powers and properties and stuff. So once again, he should at least question, is there any kind of truth in this like false demonic religion? Or like, you know, how is it that they actually have real power in their religion? In the third movie, The Last Crusade, he goes after the Holy Grail, which is the cup of Jesus Christ, right? And once again, he finds a Knights Templar there, like a Christian knight who got stuck, I believe, in the cave it was. And then he finds that like the Grail is real. So does that not confirm that the story of Jesus Christ is also real? You would think that Indiana Jones would become a Christian after this movie. And to make matters worse, when you get to the Dial of Destiny, which is the newest movie that just came out, he literally has a line in that movie where he says something along the lines of, I've learned it doesn't really matter what you believe, but how hard you believe it, or something like that. And that's a really stupid and goofy line, because his experiences and his adventures have proven that it actually does matter what you believe. Some religions have truth and others have falsehoods. And Indiana Jones should know that better than anybody, because he's been on these adventures and he's been on these explorations and he's proven that some of these things are real. And so no, it doesn't matter how hard you believe something to be true. What he's talking about, again, goes back to like self-actualization, self-discovery. You can just believe whatever it is that you want to believe and you can make it happen, right? And that's kind of what these movies are really about. At the end of the day, I would have preferred a selfless character, one who starts the movie out differently than the way he ends the movie, who starts the series out differently than the way he ends the series. Those are my favorite kinds of stories, ones where characters grow, they transform, they change their minds, they become less stubborn. But Indiana Jones never really does that. He's basically the same character from the first movie all the way up to the last movie. And so for that, I would call it a selfish story. And now, if you'd like us to do a deep dive on any of these movies that we're covering here today, we would love to do that. Leave a comment letting me know which of these movies you think that we should do a deeper dive in our main videos. Next up, we have the Twilight Saga. Now, I don't like Twilight at all, because in Twilight, it's all about somebody who is just on a path to pursue what it is that they want, their passions, their pleasures, their desires. There's nothing in these movies that has to do with, again, a character growth, character arc, where somebody starts out worse and then over time they become a better character. There's nothing in these movies that has to do with self-sacrifice or giving up what you want to save the world or to save others. These movies are all about, I'm going to pursue my passion, my desire, and my lust. I believe it was the second Twilight movie where that all became very clear to me. Bella literally has a whole monologue in that movie where she discusses what she knows she ought to do versus what she wants to do. And she decides to go with what she wants to do. She literally says that her heart is pulling her in one direction, and that's where her passion and basically her lust is leading her towards. And she says that that's the direction that she wants to move versus going in the direction that she knows she ought to move for the betterment of herself and for others. So these movies have a lot to do with just following your heart and doing what feels good. And so for that, I would say they're selfish movies. And now we're going to talk about selfless movies. I prefer selfless movies. Selfless movies have to do with sacrifice, character growth, overcoming challenges, helping and saving others. And a main theme that you often get in these is that we don't always get what we want, but sometimes we get what we need. And so first up, we'll talk about Iron Man. One of the things I really like about Iron Man is that he starts out the movie as a very selfish man. All he cares about is how much money he can make. He's literally in weapons manufacturing, and he doesn't care about whether or not the weapons hurt people. All that matters to him is whether or not he gets paid at the end of the day. And so he's a deeply selfish man. But then over time, he starts to learn how to become selfless. He overcomes challenges. He has to go through hardship. He sees that the weapons that his company manufactures really harm people. And so Iron Man becomes a very selfless person by the end of this movie. And across the whole MCU, we see that Iron Man slowly grows in each movie to become more and more and more selfless. So even though he was the most selfish character at the beginning of Iron Man, Tony Stark ends up being the least selfish character at the end of Endgame. His whole character arc is about learning how to let go of his life, learning how to sacrifice, and he does that by the end of Endgame. So for that, Iron Man and the Iron Man movies and Avengers movies are all about self-sacrifice. They're all about letting go of your life, saving others, helping others. And so that's why I like them so much. And I like the Hulk for similar reasons. You see, for the Hulk, this kind of movie isn't necessarily all about self-sacrifice like Iron Man was, but it is about character growth. It is about learning to be a better person so that we don't hurt other people. The Incredible Hulk and his story is all about learning how he can become a better person, learning how he can overcome this challenge, learning how he can kind of quell the monster inside of him so that he can have better control over the Hulk, so that the Hulk doesn't just take over and destroy people. And once again, by the end of the Avengers movies, Bruce Banner has better control over the Hulk than he ever has. I know so far I'm just covering a lot of superhero stories, but I promise we'll get to some other ones later. For now, I also want to talk about Doctor Strange. We did a whole video on Doctor Strange, so if you haven't seen it, please click the link in the description to watch it. But Doctor Strange is a story about a man, very similar to Tony Stark. He was very, very selfish in the beginning of the movie, and all he cared about was himself. But by the end of the movie, he grew into the kind of person who was willing to sacrifice himself and sacrifice his life over and over and over again to stop the bad guy. In our Doctor Strange video, I talk about how he's literally like a Christ figure, because the villain that he's fighting is like a satanic, demonic, evil force that's trying to take over the world, and Doctor Strange is willing to kill himself over and over and over again to try to save the world. And so this is the story about how one of the most selfish men becomes one of the most selfless men, and that's why I like it so much. Next up is Hercules, and once again, we already made a Hercules video, so click the link in the description if you'd like to see it. I hope you're starting to notice the pattern here. In this Hercules movie, Hercules sacrifices himself to save the one that he loves. This whole movie is about character growth. It's about him wanting to become the best hero. So throughout the movie, he faces challenge after challenge after challenge. He's constantly overcoming obstacles and becoming a better person. And by the end of the movie, the final obstacle that he has to achieve is self-sacrifice. Even Mulan tells a similar story. Mulan is all about courage and bravery. Mulan's father is called to go into the war, but her father's too old and she doesn't want him to go out there and hurt himself. And so she steps up and takes his place for him. That's a very selfless and courageous thing to do. So this whole movie is about bravery and self-sacrifice. And lastly, Project Hail Mary. We just made a video about Project Hail Mary last week. So if you haven't seen it yet, please click the link in the description to watch it. But in a nutshell, in Project Hail Mary, we have a character who's very cowardly, very, very weak. He wants to cling to his life, even though he doesn't even have much of a life to speak of. But by the end of the movie, he becomes willing to let it go. He becomes willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. Along the way, he learns these lessons about how to be a more brave and courageous person. And so we get that character development where he starts out the movie not so good of a guy, and then by the end of the movie, he's a very great guy. So in a nutshell, I think you could go down this list of characteristics, and I think you could apply them to really any movie, any book, any TV show, any story you've ever heard. And so I would challenge you to think about this next time you watch a movie or next time you read a book. Is this a selfish story or is this a selfless story? What is this trying to teach me? Is this movie trying to teach me about how I can manifest my own desires, how I can discover my true self, follow my heart, follow my passions? Is this movie trying to say that I'm fundamentally good as I am and that I have nothing to change or nothing to work on? Or is this movie pushing me to become a better person? Is this movie pushing me to sacrifice myself, to save others, to do things to help other people? Those kind of stories, I think, are much better stories. Let's talk about it in the comments. I'm sure you probably have a favorite story and you might be questioning right now, is it a selfish story or is it a selfless story? So leave a comment letting me know what you think and we'll have a discussion about it in the comments. And if you think that I'm totally off on this theory, please let me know that too. And maybe there's something that I'm missing from some of the movies that I covered in this video. So if you think that I was wrong or I missed something about any of the movies that I mentioned, please leave a comment letting me know what you think. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.